We're going to talk about Conor McGregor and his new appeal that he has going on with the Nikita hand case. And for those of you that don't know, obviously, there's been a situation where Conor McGregor is now appealing his, yeah, he's appealing his motion right now because he was found guilty. He had to pay. And on top of that, now he's appealing due to the fact that he is claiming there is a witness that has seen Nikita Hand assaulted by her partner. And that's very significant to the case. Now, there's a lot of things that you can look at with this case that kind of smells foul, right? Like, for example, why is it that they came forward after the fact, after the case? I'm going to get to that. I'm going to let you know why, and I'm going to give you some possibilities without really trying to incriminate anyone. Although I don't know how incriminating something would be if the obvious is sort of right in front of your face. And what I mean by that is, let's say if you're Conor McGregor, right? And your whole entire objective is to make this woman look completely bad. All right. That is your objective. You got to make her look bad because you lost the civil case. And the fact that you lost the civil case, well, now you have to appeal a motion that, I mean, sort of makes you look a whole lot better, sort of gives you a better standing. Because look, after this whole entire case with Nikita Hand, right? And by the way, for the record, I'm going to say right now that I think that she is absolutely lying. I've seen these types of cases before where they're sort of having what you would call a buyer's remorse. Okay, if you know what I mean, if you understand the case and without being too verbally explicit in the particular matter at hand with this content, I think you understand what I mean, right? There's a buyer's regret situation here, right? There was a choice that was made, and due to that choice, it was regrettable. And then on top of that, it's also damaging to the reputation of such, right? To accept the fact that you went there, partied with Conor McGregor and his homeboy, and all of that. And Noah Gonzalez says, for what? For what exactly do you mean? Let me know in the comments section below what you mean, because we're going to talk about Conor McGregor and his appeal that he has going on with the Irish courts in terms of his recent, uh, loss that he had in the civil case against Nikita Hand. So we're going to get to all of those things. Shout outs to Crime World in Ireland, by the way, right? Who better than the Irish to cover this particular story? Although I'm going to say, um, Noah Gonzalez says, I'm going to bring some people. Yeah, please, please do. Please do. And everybody around the world, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because we're going to get to the bottom of this case and try to understand what is what and who is who and how this is going to change the landscape of this particular case with Conor McGregor. Can you cover your ears for a Ja Morant edit? No, I'm not going to do that. Only Chubbs Prods says, shout outs to you, Only Chubbs Prods. Very interesting how you brought up Ja Morant in this, right? I don't know what for, I don't know what context you mean by that, but shout out to everybody around the world. Also, shout out to Noah Gonzalez, first time I've seen you here. Shout out to Only Chubbs, first time I've seen you here. So what I'm going to do is please don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. Let's get to this content right here. Hey, California homeowner, did you know that if you're... And by the way, yeah, let me know what part of the world you are from and hit the like and subscribe button if you can, please. All right, so shout outs to Crime World in Ireland. They specialize in covering Irish crime and things of that nature. So I think this is very relevant to the topic matter at hand that we are going to discuss. So we're just going to do a short piece on this for the moment, and we'll be coming back to analyse it in more detail. But there's been a very dramatic moment in the appeal Conor McGregor is taking against the civil court proceedings taken by Nikita Hand, who accused him of raping her. This has been sort of going through the appeals court
on a number of arguments on his side, one of which involved this introduction of new evidence. Yeah, I mean, I think it was described as bombshell new evidence at the time, and absolutely it would have been.
Now, you want to know what that bombshell evidence is? It consists of two witnesses that came forward saying that they'd seen Nikita Hand's partner put hands on her after the fact, after finding out she was partying with Conor McGregor and his homie.
There was two witnesses, neighbours of Nikita Hand, a couple, Samantha O'Reilly and her partner Stephen Cummins, who said they saw O'Reilly be assaulted by her boyfriend. So this is sort of that night. That night in the aftermath, and before she had attended.
So you hear that? They said it happened at night, right after the whole entire situation went down with Conor McGregor. Right. So keep that in mind. This is very important information right here.
For to the Rape Crisis Centre, and yes, so it was put forward as an explanation for some of the injuries she had suffered. Now it was bombshell new evidence, so this is a big, huge stakes. I mean, absolutely huge stakes, and obviously an affidavit was signed by the alleged witnesses, put forward to the court. That was made part of the proceedings, and everybody heard about it. It was denounced as lies by Nikita Hand, but the McGregor team had still put it forward. But amazingly, it was dropped without ceremony today. Just this morning. I mean, really quite incredible. Now, obviously.
Now, did I hear that right? They said that it was dropped, that they dropped the appeal. And if so, I think the reason for that is, think about this. The couple claimed that they never heard of the news, which is highly unlikely. I mean, that could be likely because you got to understand, right? Other Irish people have lives outside of Conor McGregor, right? Irish people have lives outside of MMA. In fact, MMA is not even the biggest thing in Ireland. So is it plausible that this couple knew or didn't know of the case that was going on? And of course, that would be absolutely possible, but highly unlikely. Highly unlikely, but still possible. Again, you never know the truth, but in the eyes of the DA, or whatever they called the district attorney version of their Irish court systems, I think they're going to look at that with absolute suspicious eyes, right? With skepticism, with uh, potential to create some sort of nefarious lies in order to accommodate the goals that Conor McGregor has, in order to, let's just be honest, right? Not only appeal it, but clear his name. You got to understand the type of damage that it did to Conor McGregor's brand, Nikita Hand, right? Because I'm going to say this out loud and I'm going to be honest, okay? Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the number one button on the comment section below, because I'm about to tell you something shocking about this particular case. I do not think that Conor McGregor violated this woman in any kind of way. And the reason why I believe that is because I think everything is consensual. Not only was it consensual, there's also an aspect of buyer's remorse, particularly on the part of Nikita Hand. And as a result of the buyer's remorse that came from that, well, she decided to try and clear her name by uh, making accusations that have nothing to do with the reality of her consent. Okay? So, with that said, it doesn't mean that Conor McGregor has never committed such acts. The only difference is that Conor McGregor never got caught for those acts. And sometimes that is just how karma works. Sometimes it is the one that you least expect that really gets you and takes you down, especially when you know that he's innocent in this particular case. I think so. Now, if you think different and you think otherwise, you are more than welcome on the comment section below to let me know otherwise.
The reason given was that McGregor's team told the three court judge, because it's an appeals, so this is kind of a preliminary stage of the appeal. The actual appeal hasn't gone ahead.
Okay, so this is just a preliminary stage of the appeal. Now, let's keep that in mind, because that is very important to understand for the sake of this case, right? The appeal, the true appeal, hasn't really taken place yet. Okay, so yes, that's where we're at right now. So this is sort of like an arraignment, right? Kind of like what they have with the arraignment, and then there's a trial. This is not a specific trial for the appeal yet. It is just like a version of an arraignment, right? Sort of just trying to see where what is what, putting it in front of the judge, giving their case, and then having the authoritative parties decide at that point. Okay, so
but there's discussions about what will be put forward in the appeal. And so basically, it's a pre-appeal hearing, I suppose, was how you could describe it. And McGregor's team, so they reflected on the matter after receiving submissions from Miss Hahn's legal team, and they'd taken the view that they could not proceed with the grounds of appeal. And the legal team then made the argument that they had a difficulty would have arisen from a report received from former Northern Ireland State pathologist Jack Crane, which reportedly supported that account. So he said that was one of the reasons why it was being withdrawn.
Back on that, sorry. So it so
So basically,
supported which account?
So basically, the McGregor's legal team had spoken to the former Northern Ireland State pathologist, and we spoke about this before, but he had given a report on the basis of reading this witness statement that has now been summarily dropped. And after reading that report, he had looked at CCTV of Nikita Hahn being brought to the hospital, looked at her CCTV of her.
Okay, so they're talking about a pathologist examining Nikita Hahn after the fact, sort of looking for specific signs that would indicate whether there was any sort of violation or any transgressions on the part of Conor McGregor. And that is what the pathologist was brought in for. Also, the surveillance camera that showed a sense of welcoming presence towards Conor McGregor, right? Rather than something that is unwelcoming. So,
in the Beacon Hotel,
I can tell you, I can see why that doesn't look very good for Nikita Hahn. But by the end of the day, it is the Irish authorities that sort of that have the final say in that. Because look, you got to remember they have a different court system than we do in the United States, so you have to keep that in mind.
And he had compiled a report basically saying some of the injuries he suffered may not have been were not visible in some of the CCTV.
So such his evidence, the court was told, or what he had included in his report, purportedly supported Samantha O'Reilly.
Yes. So guess which dude has a better chance?
All right, let's had a little commercial there.
Certainly, McGregor's legal team has said they have difficulty now linking them. But, it was greeted, I suppose, with incredulity from Nikita Hahn's representatives. Her counsel, John Gordon, said he was in shock at this late withdrawal of fresh evidence appeal. He said that she had been put through the ringer, Miss Hahn had been put through the ringer after the allegation, which she had denounced as lies and were outlined in court and reported in all the newspapers. So obviously, there's no doubt that witness statement would have been, if it would have been really true, absolute shade on Nikita Hahn's.
So we're only really been told so far in the court that they're sort of withdrawing it, but none of the reasons why.
Well, they've given a reason why, that they have difficulty linking with this report. But however, Nikita Hahn's...
There's difficulty linking with the report, meaning that they have difficulty between the evidence that was due to be given by Samantha O'Reilly and what it says in this report, or that there has been some sort of withdrawal of...
No, I think they're saying, what they are saying clearly is that they're having difficulty linking it to the report, and therefore, after receiving submissions from Miss Hahn's legal team, they're withdrawing it. So that's...
But both the report and the evidence that was due to be given by Samantha O'Reilly came from the McGregor side.
100%.
So they're now having difficulties linking the two of them.
Exactly. However, in the point, I suppose, or to paraphrase Nikita Hahn's team, this stuff has already been put out there.
Yeah.
So I want to preface this a little bit, right? and give you a possibility of what happened when they brought in the witnesses. You know what? I'm actually going to wait until more people arrive in here to tell you what I think about the witnesses and how they came about to this conclusion. So I'm going to wait for a bit, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to tell you exactly what the motivation is behind these witnesses and, well, who these witnesses have talked to in order to somehow put this narrative out there. So I'm going to wait for a few more people to come in here first, and then, yeah, we'll get right to it.
And that obviously has a huge impact. It's reported in all the newspapers. We would always do report what's in court proceedings. It absolutely gave a very, very contradictory account of Nikita Hand and for as well.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to say about the Nikita Hand witnesses, right? Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, I need you to hit that like button one time. I need you to hit that subscribe button one time. And I'm going to tell you about these witnesses and what is going on here. Okay? All right, so here we go. This is what I got to say about the witnesses, right? So if you're Conor McGregor's team, you're going to bring in, let's say, a group of private investigators. Okay, so you're going to take these private investigators, you're going to go to the resident of Nikita Hand, and while you're out there scoping, canvassing, you're going to look and see who the neighbors are. Okay, this is the neighbor of Nikita Hand and her partner. They live in this side. They're adjacent to their windows. Okay, they're at proximity level in proximity near closeness to seeing their windows. We can create a story out of this. So what do? They poach the alleged witnesses. They talk to the witnesses and say to them, "Hey, listen, do you know about this case? This is what we're going to need you to say." And there is a possibility that they could pay him off. I mean, obviously, Conor McGregor is a very wealthy man. He can obviously pay off anybody to do anything, right? And you look at all the past transgressions that he's created, and also the people that have accused him, and also, let's say, have taken him to court or have told on him or snitched on him. All of a sudden these people's cars burn down. They get attacked. There's home invasions, you name it, right? And by the way, we're going to get into the gang affiliations of Conor McGregor after this really fascinating and interesting stuff, right? So okay, they tell him, listen, we're going to pay you money. Okay, and that's a possibility, but they're probably going to pay them in cash, the couple that they need to act as witnesses. And then on top of that, they can't put it in a bank, because if they do, well, then the police are going to be onto you and they're going to find out, right? So obviously that's a possible investigation, right? In terms of possibly looking at, issues of perjury, right? Committing an act of fraud in the court systems. That is a possibility. So keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind. Private investigators poaching the alleged witnesses, giving them a story to say, and then paying them on the side, right? That is standard procedure when it comes to these things. And when you are wealthy enough, you can literally afford a private investigator to make these things happen.
Her former partner, who totally denies the allegation that he struck her. So, they're saying.
And then there you go. The partner is denying that he had struck her due to the fact that maybe perhaps he was angry at the transgressions that she's done, right? So, yeah, that's the reality of this situation right here.
This is extraordinary.
Or we don't know what the reality of the situation is, because there's a lot of murky waters here, right? All of a sudden, the witnesses come out of nowhere and after the fact, and then they claim that they never knew about the case. But you also got to understand there is a possibility to where the witnesses were poached by private investigators. Hey, say this, keep this on a hush. We'll give you cash so it's not tracked by the Garda or any law enforcement that may look into it, and just say that you saw Nikita Hand get struck. So this way, we can create a narrative, or maybe Conor McGregor never struck her at all, right? Maybe it's just uh, the fact that, yeah, maybe he really did, hit her, and maybe he really did hit her, the partner, and as a result of that, they just decided to blame it on Conor McGregor, but Conor McGregor has no way of proving it, so he has to poach witnesses or alleged witnesses to try and make this happen.
And they make a very clear comment that this evidence, the witness evidence, should be, they believe that it should be allowed, they should be allowed to bring the matter to the attention of the DPP for potential perjury, as well as subordination of perjury by McGregor. That subordination is a legal term, but it's basically inducing a perjury. Yeah. So
Okay, so now they're talking about a possible perjury here because to the Irish authorities, they're looking at this like, wait a minute, these wit- these witnesses are coming after the fact, after the case, and then they also claim that they never heard of the case, and that could be possible too because remember I told you in the beginning of the stream there are Irish people out there that have different lives that they have to lead, and as a result of that, maybe Conor McGregor's court case is not the number one prerogative in their mind.
They're yeah, exactly. It's kind of it's a legal term to say basically. Obviously, McGregor didn't make this statement, but their claim is that the DPP should look at it for this offence.
So Nikita Hand's legal team are focusing on the evidence that was due to be given as opposed to the report.
They are focusing on the evidence. I mean, the witness statement is the basis from which the report is drawn up. That's what we were told in the previous hearing. He looked at the former state pathologist, looked at the CCTV evidence in light of receiving this new witness statement, and was asked to draw up a report in that context. So what's obviously even in that report that's drawn up, what is key is this witness statement. Now,
Wanda O'Reilly was due to give evidence today.
She was due to give evidence, or certainly it would be, her account was to be challenged because it hadn't been accepted. Remember, this is a very unusual legal proceeding anyway, because as we said before, but just to go over it again, it normally appeals don't allow new evidence to be heard. What they are on is points of law. So further on later today, we'll hear some of other Conor McGregor's other points of law. Not to get into them now, but they'd be basically, judges' summations. So you don't generally get to introduce new evidence. It's very rare, but it is technically allowed if it can be shown that this evidence wasn't available, and also that the other clear factor of it is that it has to be credible. So you have to.
So, okay, the appeal has a little bit of some challenges right now, okay? And the challenges sort of involve the fact that it's a little bit challenging for the part of Conor McGregor to prove this, right? Because the Irish authorities are definitely looking at this with suspicious eyes.
To prove its credibility. And obviously, at this point, it's being withdrawn. And even the judge, the presiding judge of the three judge court, Miss Justice Isabel Kennedy, said they would allow the withdrawal of the grounds, but she said it was unsatisfactory that the application to withdraw was made so late in the day, both for the court but also for Miss Hand. Now, John Gordon and Nikita Hand's counsel came back again and said he was asking McGregor's side to apologise to Miss Hand, and that didn't seem to be dismissed out of hand. It's his McGregor senior counsel said that responded that this was something we can deal with through McGregor's solicitor Michael Staines if appropriate. And he said that in the absence of Professor Crane's evidence, there was no corroboration of Miss O'Reilly's evidence. So something has happened. It's not very clear.
And it's interesting to see that neither Miss O'Reilly nor her partner, Mr. Cummins, are in court today. This is all the lawyers. Their affidavits we had previously heard inferred that Miss Hand was assaulted by her then partner Stephen Redmond, and that Mr. Cummins, who was a plumber, claims he heard screams coming from the house that particular evening. And the couple had only said they came forward after they saw television reports about the trial. They hadn't sort of put two and two together before that. And obviously, as we've mentioned, their claims were dismissed as lies um, by Nikita.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back on the evidence, the witness statement that was detailed in court, I mean, some of it was that they were basically neighbours. I can't remember exactly what hour the morning was, but it was it was an early morning, and they looked out the window and they could see across the road. They could see. They were claiming they could see this altercation here. Yeah, I mean, look, you can.
Okay, so there it is, right? This is where they start claiming that there was some sort of some sort of like altercation happening.
People will understand they're looking out the window and they didn't, are you going to see what you're going to see? And also that they didn't actually see the assault even, but what they saw was something that looked like an assault. Mm-hmm. So obviously McGregor.
So there you go. They're saying that it possibly wasn't an assault that they saw. It was something that sort of looked like an assault, right? Which is interesting. Very interesting that that's how they would word it. Okay, hold on a second here. Okay, we got something for RP MMA. Okay, let's watch that after this right here. Let's try to finish this off right here.
Exactly. I mean, look, the basic line that McGregor's team say is that we could not find a legal gateway for admissibility in this case. So that is what they say. But obviously, it's gone now. It's not. It's something that stands up, and it's removed from the proceedings.
And her team are calling for consequences in regards to putting it forward in the first place. Okay, now thanks.
Thanks, Nicola.
All right. Well, there you go. Right.
So, and you're what?
There it is. What can you really say about that case? I mean, look, there's just a lot of crazy evidence that sort of may be ignored, right? Because yeah, I don't know how they're going to believe the witnesses, but let's see. Let's see what RP MMA has to say about this because he covered this extensively right here. Shout out to RP MMA right here.
But from the very offset of the verdict coming through, we have known that Nikita Han and her legal team have committed perjury themselves during the original court case. It was proven that she lied under oath in front of the judge. And
so there you go. The other case of this is looking at the fact that she probably committed perjury herself, and that could be a way for Conor McGregor and his team to appeal this case.
Jury, when putting forward her case about James Lawrence, and nobody spoke about perjury in that instance. Wall-to-wall coverage this week of the Conor McGregor story. He had two new witnesses that were going to testify and say that they had seen Nikita Han being beat up by her ex-partner, who coincidentally disappeared the morning after Nikita Han came home and said that she'd spent.
So apparently, they are saying that he had. Yeah, let's hear more of this.
The last 24 hours with Conor McGregor and his buddy in a hotel room, taking some substances and doing some other stuff. You're not allowed to question that. You're not allowed to even surmise that maybe he got annoyed and left. But hey, whatever. So two new witnesses were due to appear in court and testify under oath that they had seen an argument that got extremely physical between Nikita Han and her ex-boyfriend. The morning of the court proceedings, Conor McGregor's team withdrew their new evidence, which sparked outrage against the.
Okay, so they withdrew their evidence. Why is that? Right? That is interesting to know what made them want to withdraw their evidence.
Virtue signalers and social justice warriors and the mainstream media.
Hold on a second. We're going to expand on this in a second. Hold on just a second. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, back
We're
at
calling
it.
for Conor McGregor to be held accountable in terms of perjury. A file is apparently being sent to the DPP by Nikita Hand's legal team requesting the same. And when you jump onto social media, you'll see that it's perjury this, perjury that. He needs to be locked up, lying under oath, all this type of stuff. And I find it very intriguing that this week.
Now, look, can you see why a lot of people are saying that there's perjury involved, right? There are witnesses that came after the fact, and when the witnesses came after the fact, uh, they claimed that they never saw the case online, right, or heard about it. Sort of like, I don't know, man, if you're a New Yorker, right, I don't know how difficult it would be for you to run across the P. Diddy trial, right? Let's say you're a New Yorker, you work in Wall Street, or you have an office in downtown New York, right? And you're walking around Midtown Manhattan, right? You're going to see on Times Square X, Y, and Z, P. Diddy's case, updates on this particular matter. You walk by, there's a newspaper stand, there's P. Diddy's trial, day such and such, right? It's hard to miss it. Now, if you're in Dublin and there's this case going on with Conor McGregor, I think it would be very hard to ignore it or, uh, not know about it by the very least. Now, they said they knew about it, but they didn't really understand the extent that maybe their neighbor was involved.
After the court proceedings, Nikita Hand has found herself in some extremely hot water also. And if you didn't hate the media enough, they didn't even cover it. They didn't even talk about it. We just got plastered wall to wall. Conor McGregor is a serial assaulter and he needs to go down. And look, he's making a mockery of the court and lying.
Now, look, regardless of the fact whether he was guilty or not, I think there's an inherent bias that Irish media has towards Conor McGregor because you got to understand the type of background that Conor McGregor comes from, right? The type of background that he comes from, obviously, is a working class background of Dublin, which, by the way, I'm going to be honest with you, is really looked down upon with Irish elites, right? People that, let's say, if you've ever been to Boston or even in UC Davis, right? You'll see a lot of engineering students there that come from Ireland, and usually these are not the Conor McGregor type of Irish, right? I mean, they come from affluent families in Ireland, and as such, they have a little bit of an elitist mentality, and as such, also sort of lean towards the left side of things a little bit. Okay, leaning towards the liberal side of things. A great example of this is Ian Gary. Now, obviously, you look at Ian Gary, you would say that he sort of leans in a very liberal matter, right? Right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, where does that come from? Obviously, he comes from a middle class Irish background that has a lot to do with it. These people, they look down on people like Conor McGregor. They look at them as hooligans, gangsters, thugs, and this, that, and the other, right? So that's just the overall view of how they see people like that. So, okay, moving on.
Under oath. That's what we got. And in fact, the inversion is quite true when it comes to Nikita Han as well. I want to show you a little clip from Terry Gorey. He's a solicitor and I guess like a vlogger. He's done some good work during the trial of Nikita Han and Conor McGregor. Very biased towards Nikita Han and obviously didn't like Conor McGregor. That's fine. It's subjective. He's trying to be objective, but it didn't work out for him. But in terms of being a legal voice and knowing what he's talking about, I think this was a very interesting clip that I saw coming out. And he was the only one, in fairness, that actually spoke in these terms after what we saw transpire during court proceedings this week. There was bad news this week in the Court of Appeal for Conor McGregor, but I think there's actually bad news for Nikita Hand as well.
Oh, okay. Well, how about this? Remember that video that I played for you earlier with Crime World in Ireland? That was 8 days ago. This right here by RP MMA is 3 days ago. And he's playing a video of this gentleman right here speaking about how this case is going bad for Nikita Hand in terms of the appeal. Let's find out why. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to get to this topic at hand, and I'm going to give you some objective truths on this particular matter.
Let me explain. Firstly, the bad news for Conor McGregor. The Court of Appeal is now asking the DPP to consider possible perjury concerning the fresh evidence. So McGregor was to introduce new fresh evidence at the Court of Appeal in which neighbours of Nikita Hand were going to testify or give evidence that they had.
Now, remember the neighbors, right? You can almost guarantee, or at least by the very bare minimum, suspect that perhaps maybe they were poached by private investigators. Because remember, if you're wealthy enough, you can afford to have private investigators do your bidding for you and sort of poach them, coach them, and guide them on the process of this is what you saw, this is what you saw happen, this is what you're going to say under oath, under court, and here's a little bit of some cash under the table. Just be on the hush about it.
Seen a row between Nikita Hand and her then partner and physical altercation, as it were, and that might explain the bruising. However, that was withdrawn. The application to introduce that evidence was withdrawn the morning of the hearing. And so that has given rise to all sorts of rumour and speculation as to how or why that would happen. Of course, it gave rise to rumour and speculation because the media jumped all over it. And as I said, you had some like mentally ill campaigners standing up outside the courthouse. These people that are literally up on stages, hanging out with Ruth Coppinger with absolute venom in their eyes. Of course, there's going to be a barrage of people saying, "See, I told you so." There was absolutely no evidence. This is not objectivity. This is just delusion. Absolute delusion. These people, the neighbours, had already sworn affidavits some time ago, and obviously they were going to be open then to give evidence in the trial or in the hearing. But that application, as I say, to introduce that fresh evidence was withdrawn by McGregor's side on the morning of the hearing.
So he withdrew his evidence, and we're going to find out exactly what made him withdrew his evidence, or at least what his legal team made him withdraw his evidence for.
And that has given rise to the Court of Appeal concerning or considering asking the DPP to consider whether perjury arising from this fresh evidence. So the Court of Appeal is referring to the DPP material concerning the fresh evidence filed on behalf of Conor McGregor for consideration of possible perjury. So that's the bad news for McGregor.
Oh, okay. So the bad news is for McGregor on the possible charges of perjury. Now that's insane. Okay. By the way, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get to it. We're going to get to the bottom of this case and find out what is what and give you an objective truth. Watch Clown Show says, what's going on here? Well, we have some possible charges on Conor McGregor facing perjury. On top of that, new evidence that he's trying to present to the court, maybe a possible witness tampering of some sort. Yeah, that's what's going on here. I'll watch Clown Show. Shout out to you, everybody around the world. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get to it right now.
However, I think for Nikita Hand as well, a lot of people are overlooking the fact that McGregor's appeal against the finding in the High Court by the jury that he sexually assaulted and essentially Nikita Hand, his appeal against that went ahead even in the absence of the fresh evidence. He had different grounds for doing that or bringing that appeal. But it's bad news for Nikita Hand. I think that, as he said, there is an overlooked part of this story. Even though this fresh evidence wasn't available during the appeal process initially, the appeal still went through. So someone in higher stature within the justice system of Ireland looked at that case and, taking all biases aside, obviously they looked at what transpired during this court case, and what I believe personally was absolutely ludicrous behaviour from Justice Owens, the judge who was proceeding over this. Insane behaviour, and I'm sure behind closed doors.
Now, what insane behavior is he referring to? Look, I told you guys earlier, there is an inherent bias towards people that come from a working class background in Ireland, right? Because let's be honest, right? It's sort of like very similar to how black people are viewed in the United States, very similar to how Italians were viewed during their prime days of the mob and things of that nature, right? It's sort of the same thing in that part of Ireland, right? People like Daniel Kinahan, who's a big time mobster, big time drug runner, and all types of things that he's into, right? You got to remember what kind of background did he come from. Obviously, he came from that same type of background that Conor McGregor came from, not the middle class elite society of Ireland.
Within the judicial system of Ireland, this judge's peers are thinking, How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? This is not going to work out well. So, with all that taken into account, there was an appeal granted. So, after the jury found that he was liable in this civil case, remember, and with all the interference from Justice Owens, which we went through ad nauseum, continuously telling the jury to forget about certain testimonies and continuously angling.
So, in other words, an inherent bias by Justice Owens, because let's face it, look, let's look up who this Justice Owens guy is, right? You sort of give you a psychological background on who he is, right? Justice Owens of Dublin. Let's take a look at who this guy is, just so we can understand if there's even a public record of him at all. Okay, so Alexander Owens. Okay, so it is Alexander Owens, an Irish judge who has served as an Irish judge since February 2019. Okay, but so yes, yes, okay, this is the right guy because right here it says the Conor McGregor trial. Okay, so I'm gonna try to read. No, no, no. I don't want to do accents on this one. I'm just gonna do my normal voice. Okay, so Alexander Owens is an Irish judge who served as a judge in the High Court since February 2019. He formerly worked as a barrister with an expertise in criminal law. Okay, so barrister I think has something to do with the legal proceedings or matters at hand. Owens attended Trinity College in Dublin, where he obtained a BA. He studied to become a barrister at the King's Inn. Okay, so legal career. He called to the bar in 1980, became a senior counsel in 2000. His practice focused on criminal law and the law of conveyancing, local government, and chancery law. He also appeared in cases involving company law and personal injuries. He frequently appeared on behalf of Director of Public Prosecutions. He prosecuted criminal trials of a serious nature involving sexual offenses, kidnapping, murder, waste offenses. I think that has something to do with garbage and this and that. Yeah, waste offenses, terrorism offenses. He also appeared for the Minister for Justice in action relaying the publication of Clyon report. He was appointed deputy chairman of the panel of inquiry of the University of Dublin in 2004 and was subsequently became the head chair. So, judicial career of Owens. Owens was appointed as the judge of the High Court in 2019. He presided over cases involving extradition, sexual offenses, murder, manslaughter, false imprisonment, and proceeds of crime. Now, outside of criminal law, he has heard cases involving child law, poverty, and personal injury. Now, he became a judge of a special criminal court in 2019, replacing Eileen Donnelly. Okay, he acted as a presiding judge in that court. Now, notable cases that he has proceeded over also included the trial circuit court of Judge Gerard O'Brien in December 2023, a trial of Conor McGregor in 2024. So, okay, Trinity King's College. What kind of college is that? Okay, obviously, anybody that's able to afford to go to college in Dublin obviously has some sort of, or I think they have free education there. I'm not sure, but I would think it's probably the same in. But long story short, elitist, liberal, middle class, right, has a certain vendetta against people of Conor McGregor's background. And look, you got to understand, right? Just because that is true, that uh, it doesn't mean that none of these things are true regarding all of the transgressions that McGregor has done. So
them towards other testimonies. Absolute ludicrous behavior. So maybe as a result of that, that's why the appeal went through without any fresh evidence, because whoever was above Mr. Owens was thinking, okay, this is crazy, right? So McGregor's appeal went ahead anyway with the Court of Appeal. I think there's bad news for Nikita Hand here, because in addition to McGregor's appeal, McGregor's mate, James Lawrence, was appealing the award of costs.
Now, keep in mind, James Lawrence is obviously the homie of Conor McGregor who went with him to this party, right? And what's interesting about that story, right? He literally picked him up at his house with no shoes on and said, "Hey, come on, let's get in the car and just, go on and about and just." I mean, he didn't look like he even got ready, right? He just told him, "Hey, get up out of the house, hop in this Bentley and let's go for a ride, right? Basically, one of those types of things.
Or a failure, rather, by Mr. Justice Alexander Owens to award him his costs. The usual situation in litigation is that the loser pays the costs of the winner.
So here's the thing that you got to understand about Irish law, right? The loser pays the cost of the winner in those civil cases they have going on there. So the fact that James Lawrence was found not guilty, it is now Nikita Hand that had to pay for that, right? Which is weird because it's like she pays what she won from Conor McGregor, so in the end she got nothing. Let me say that again. She pays what she won from Conor McGregor to pay it back to James, so in the end got absolutely nothing. Keep that in mind in perspective.
And in this case, remember, Nikita Hand won against Conor McGregor in relation to her claim. However, she also accused James Lawrence of sexually assaulting her, etc., and that was,
which is bonkers if you think about it, because after the fact, after McGregor had left, they were both found in the same room, and yeah, so on and so forth, with everything that deals with consensual acts.
not found to be the case by the jury. Nevertheless, the judge, because he took the view, Mr. Justice Alexander Owens took the view that Conor McGregor and James Lawrence were acting in lockstep, and Mr. McGregor paid Mr. Lawrence's legal costs. The judge didn't award Mr. Lawrence his legal costs. However, that flies in the face of the usual rule, where, as I say, the usual rule is that the loser pays. And in this case, in relation to Nikita Hand versus Lawrence, she was the loser. Another great point by Terry here, and again, the way he delivers it is kind of like he's on eggshells because he doesn't want to go all in. Because we know what he's saying is absolutely damning for the whole Nikita Hand narrative. So let's just put it into perspective. Social media has blown up. The mainstream media has blown up, talking about perjury and the DPP and Conor McGregor must go down for lying under oath. But from the very offset of the verdict coming through that went against Conor McGregor and did find him liable in this civil case, we have known that Nikita Hand and her legal team have committed perjury themselves during the original court case. Is everybody missing that? So to be up on the stand under oath and to be lying about the James Lawrence incident and have your legal team go through the rigmarole of actually putting forward a case in front of a judge and having accusations aimed at James Lawrence, and then for all of that to fall down and for the jury and for the judge to come out with the verdict that none of that transpired, does that not constitute perjury on behalf of Nikita Hand and her legal team, as the story that her and her legal team decided to go with was deemed untrue in the court of law and by a judge and jury? Is that not perjury also? And saying it in the nicest terms, that it's just not the norm to see a judge not award compensation or the fees to the person who was accused and then deemed innocent. It's just not normal the way that's done. Of course it's not normal. I think the word you're looking for is it's not legal, is what you actually meant to say.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? What they're trying to say is normal or abnormal really is illegal or not legal in the case that they are talking about. Once again, an inherent bias that they have towards Conor McGregor. Also, you got to understand, right? A lot of the biasness that comes towards him is not necessarily something that look. He asked for it. Let's just be honest about that, right? Like, of course, if you exhibit a certain type of behavior, that's just what is going to be expected out of you in terms of accusations, in terms of possibilities from one trend to another, right? Just trying to recognize patterns in that, in how they're going about it. But it doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's objective, and it doesn't mean that it's the proper way to deal with the situation at hand.
But in fairness, he's doing a great job of treading water here and not absolutely slamming Justice Alexander Owens and Nikita Hand and her legal team for lying repeatedly under oath and wasting the time of the court and of the jury. The Court of Appeal have given some indication, and this is where I think the bad news comes for Nikita Hand, because Senior Counsel John Fitzgerald for Mr. Lawrence, he argued on Wednesday that his client was entitled to his costs against Ms. Hand on grounds including the normal cost rule that they go to the winning party. So that's the normal rule. And Mr. Lawrence's senior counsel is absolutely correct in that. And Ray Boland, however, senior counsel for Miss Hand, submitted that the trial judge had discretion to make the order he had. When counsel said an order for costs against Miss Hand would wipe out her damages award. Miss Justice Kennedy in the Court of Appeal said, wanting the court to take cognizance of possible consequences of its orders was, quote, a difficult argument to make. Justice Kennedy in the Court of Appeals is saying it in the most diplomatic way possible. It's not really normal for the accused, after being found not guilty, to not receive his legal fees. It's not normal. Of course, it's not normal. It's not legal. Justice Kennedy is indicating that the argument being made on behalf of Nikita Hand that if Lawrence was to get his costs awarded, it would wipe out her damages award. Miss Justice Kennedy has said that that was, quote, a difficult argument to make. You can read what you like into that, but obviously that particular judge, and there's 3 judges in the Court of Appeal, but that particular judge has given a sort of an indication that the argument that any costs awarded against Miss Hand would wipe out her damages award, that's not an argument that's going to win the day, quite frankly. That's what she seems to be indicating. That's what I'm reading into it anyway. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but she's not using the word difficult in relation to that argument for nothing. In other words, she's accepting the argument, but she says it's a difficult argument to make. And therefore, I think the bad news for Nikita Hand is that it's quite likely, well, it's possible, in my view, it's likely that the Court of Appeal will actually award costs to Mr. Lawrence against Nikita Hand. And if that's the case, according to Nikita Hand's own senior counsel, it would wipe out her damages award. Trying to make the argument.
Yeah, so exactly. It would absolutely wipe out her damage award because remember, in Ireland, when it comes to lawsuits, it is the loser who pays for the winner, right? And in this case, follow the map, okay? Conor lost, so he has to pay Nikita, but Nikita got the money, and Lawrence won, so Nikita has to pay Lawrence the money, okay? So that right there is the confusing part about it. And then, for whatever biased reason this judge has going on, in his mind, he is saying to himself, you know what? Maybe we should just not give the damages towards Lawrence because then that would somehow uncompensate Nikita Hand. But the reality is, who cares, right? There is no emotions involved in law and order and what is written on your country's constitution, right? If the winner gets the money, then the winner gets the money. If the loser has to pay, then the loser has to pay, irregardless of the fact that it could damage whatever wins that she has. That's just how the cookie crumbles by the end of the day. But for whatever reason, this judge is very much adamant in making sure that Nikita Hand gets her money in any kind of way, right? Because maybe he feels that she should be compensated in his own biased worldview.
Argument that Mr. Lawrence's legal fees were being paid by a millionaire, so we don't have to pay him costs as we do normally or legally. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Okay, now think about how much of a liberal idea that is, right? Well, because you got a multi-millionaire paying for your stuff, then maybe you should just not receive anything. Hold on. All right, so here we go.
Expect that her winnings, her 280,000 or whatever it was, she managed to hustle out of Conor McGregor. I suspect that there's way more money there than that. It's not coming from Conor McGregor. It's coming from a higher source, but that's just an opinion. The comment by Miss Justice Kennedy in the Court of Appeal, that she said that the argument that was being made by Miss Hand's senior counsel was a difficult argument to make. You can judge yourself. Let's see what happens. The Court of Appeal have reserved judgment in this. And remember, there's 2 aspects to the appeal. One is Conor McGregor appealing against the finding by the High Court civil trial, civil jury that he had Nikita Hand. And the other appeal, though, is James Lawrence's appeal against the order for costs not being granted to him. In other words, no order or his costs were not awarded to him. And as I say, Mr. Justice Alexander Owens, who had discretion, absolutely took the view that because McGregor and Lawrence were actually acting in what he described as lockstep, he didn't award Lawrence his costs, even though, strictly speaking, Lawrence won vis-a-vis Miss Hand. So James Lawrence won his case against Nikita Han in front of the world. Not much coverage from the mainstream media. It was proven.
Yeah, that is strange that there isn't a lot of coverage on that, but you also have to understand James Lawrence is just a homie of Conor McGregor, right? He's not really anybody that's famous. He's not a fighter. He's not an actor. He's not anybody that's known in the public sphere. So as a result of that, I just don't think that it would be in the interests of news companies or content creators or people that convey news to you to sort of talk about it. I mean, other than, of course, uh, freelance content creators and freelance journalists of that nature.
That she lied under oath in front of the judge and jury when putting forward her case about James Lawrence. And nobody spoke about perjury in that instance, but they speak about it a lot in terms of Conor McGregor's new evidence that didn't make it to the court on Wednesday. The extremely biased judge that was overseeing proceedings with the James Lawrence, Nikita and Conor McGregor case totally went against legality and didn't award cost to James Lawrence after he won because his friend was Conor McGregor. So he got punished for having a friend with a few pounds in the bank. So
yeah, that's weird, right? You getting punished because you have a friend that is, a billionaire at this point, right? Paying your legal costs.
in
But
a
yeah,
week where we see the media completely destroy Conor McGregor and activists coming out of the woodwork and nut jobs over on social media talking about perjury and the DPP and Conor must go down this time. Wake up, have a little look around, take off the old goggles and just listen to a legal professional like good old Terry here and just
all right, so check this out, right? Let's go back 7 months ago, okay? I'm going to show you guys something from 7 months ago, okay? This is regarding the Devlin trial, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, not the D. Devlin trial. Obviously, what D. Devlin says about Nikita Hand 7 months ago. And keep in mind, this is when Conor is also in a lawsuit against Artem Lobov. Check this out. On the thumbnail mentioning that my sons are going to be born about women like you. So we're going to talk about that because there's a little bit some red pillish type of conversation. Red pillish. I don't even know if that's actual uh, name or an actual word, but the red pill idea is a concept that a lot of young men out there are sort of taking into consideration. And one forefront of that particular idea is obviously none other than Andrew Tate. There's obviously Byron Gaines from Fresh and Fit, Justin Whaler. I believe he's also a homeboy of Andrew Tate. But yeah, there's a little bit some reality to a lot of these types of topics that we're going to talk about. And this case with Conor McGregor, I believe, has gone beyond MMA. Now, obviously, when you are a superstar in the likes of Conor McGregor, you're going to attract a certain uh, casual attention, okay? And primarily because this is a case that a lot of people can, quite frankly, relate to in some kind of way. Is and even if you didn't go through something like that, maybe your favorite athlete went through something like that. Kobe Bryant, I believe, was sort of in this same situation as well. A whole bunch of athletes, a whole bunch of athletes. But the main question that we really have to ask, right, is that did Conor McGregor do any of this? And it's important to understand it. And by the way, for those of you that are watching this right now, this is me commentating while watching my workout videos, but we're also talking about Conor McGregor at the same time. So forgive me, this is just the intro to the show and the intro to the live stream. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And we're going to talk about it. Other main topics that we're going to talk about in this live stream today, Conor McGregor's lawsuit with Artem Lobov. That's something that is also coming up right after this situation right now. We're going to talk about that because it doesn't end for Conor McGregor. Oh, the struggle doesn't end. Just like this struggle that I'm going through right here, where I'm lifting a 100-pound barbell on the floor and onto the air. And it sort of simulates a ground and pound position in order to have powerful strikes when you are on top of someone's guard. So this is sort of what this workout is representing. You guys remember when Conor McGregor was getting beat with a ground and pound position from Khabib, right? You started saying to yourself, wow, you know what, man, where is this fight going to go? And does Conor even have a chance of winning here? Well, we're seeing this court case right here, and we thought to ourselves, you know what, he has a winning chance because of all the evidence that showed, and by the way, the type of evidence that sort of showed enough reason to not convict his friend. And again, conviction, whatever, it's a civil case by the end of the day. Let me get rid of this because we are live as we are watching this right now. So, I think there's something wrong if he gets acquitted and Conor doesn't. Now, I got to tell you, there are other matters at hand that sort of deal with this particular subject. You want to know what that is? I'm going to play a video regarding that particular matter. Okay? Conor McGregor is running for president in Ireland, or at least said that he was going to. The fact that he said that alone, I think, really raised red flags for a lot of people. Okay? It raised a lot of red flags for a lot of people, in particular the elites in Ireland. I want to tell you about the elites in Ireland, right? What a lot of people don't understand about Ireland, and in particular, the type of political structure that they have going on, is heavily discriminated even before he was a famous mixed martial arts superstar. I'm going to tell you why. He was heavily criticized and, marginalized. That's the better word for it. Why Conor McGregor was marginalized even before he was a mixed martial arts superstar in Ireland. He comes from a working class background. Many of you that don't understand the sociology of Ireland, I think, will be surprised that people of a working class background are often discriminated. Now, Daniel Kinahan, the big Irish mob boss, something you got to understand about him. This guy right here, he came from that same working class background. And as a result, he was heavily discriminated coming up. And of course, it's sort of a self-induced discrimination because everybody kind of knows what you're doing, right? Even though you live in this world of secret and this and that, people know. People that are tapped in know your reputation. They know about, and it's really no secret from there. And then at some point, there's this paperwork that is out on you that details what you do, what you've done, and what you're capable of doing to other people. So from the start, Conor McGregor never had a chance of being fairly treated by the Irish elites. Okay, and in particular, who are the Irish elites? A lot of them are heavily educated people in Ireland. And with that said, many of them sort of have this discriminatory outlook on people that come from a working class background, and quite frankly, with that particular background, I mean, they kind of stereotype them in this box of having a high propensity for criminal behavior. Okay, so this is the type of class that Conor McGregor grew up around. So now imagine this superstar I'm sorry, this working class guy becomes a superstar in Conor McGregor, and what sort of problems are you going to have with the order in your country in Ireland when you're looking at this from a level of the elites, right? And I'm talking about the political elites of Ireland because, like what I said, there is a sociological dynamic between the working class of Ireland versus the political elites of Ireland that sort of don't want somebody like Conor McGregor in power. So that's something that really needs to be understood. So what does that mean? Well, I got to be honest with you guys, right? I think there is a good chance to sort of point out that, you know what? Maybe Conor was set up here. I'm serious. There's a good reason to believe that because he tried to run for politics. This is a very important lesson that we may have to try to delve into when it comes to people trying to delve into political powers and how they're going to try and stop you. I'm going to show you guys a video that I made last year that I think is very much relevant to today. Okay, I'm going to play you right now. Yes, it is Irish related. It does deal with, let's say, things that are going on in Ireland. I said to myself, you know what? Maybe there's a chance. And then lo and behold, guess what happens? They charge Conor McGregor with incitement just based on the fact that, well, let's say there was this migrant from the Slavic region that had been living in Dublin for some odd years now, maybe even a decade or so, from according to the reports that were being mentioned. And the unfortunate thing about that is the reason of, well, unfortunately, somebody got taken out in a very negative and a very brutal fashion, right? And we're talking like with a knife, we're talking things that involve gruesome details. Basically, a school teacher, nonetheless. So, what does Conor McGregor do as in response to any of this? He goes and says something to the extent, and you guys can look it up. He has it on his Twitter, and he has deleted it based on the fact that he's being investigated by the Irish government, the Garda, for incitement. Well, you can probably find it somewhere online with people screenshotting it. But basically, something along the lines where we're at war because of this thing that is going on, and this is a prevalent mindset that a lot of people in the Western European world are feeling. Not so much with Ireland. Why? Because, for one, you got to understand Ireland was a country that fought an imperialist nation such as Great Britain. And because of that, they sort of gained what you would call a little bit of, let's say, a liberal leaning stance when it came to, let's say, immigration, which is why Ireland is very prominent in allowing a lot of immigrants to come to their country and to even their own detriment from what is happening right now. The simple fact that, well, they don't have to work, there's no incentive to work, and we don't even understand or know the reason behind why this Slavic man decided to go out and kill a teacher. Nonetheless, it was enough for a lot of people to be very upset. And then on top of that, you have people that are, let's say, in the right-wing space. They're saying something to the extent, well, you know what? They are worried about this, but they're not worried about the actual killer, meaning they're worried about what Conor McGregor is saying and how they're going to try to tie him into some kind of incitement when they're not even worried about the killer. Well, the unfortunate thing that I have to say about that, in all objectivity, is the false equivalence that comes with that. For one, of course this man is going to get arrested. There's nowhere in the world where you can just go and kill somebody, unless, of course, it has something to do with extrajudicial, let's say, covert ops missions and whatnot. But you can't get away with murder in any society. They're going to lock you up, and so they did. I'm sure this man's been locked up now. The punishment, obviously, is going to be debatable whether he gets life or whether he gets prison, and all of that is a variation. And really,
is just really dependent upon which state has certain types of laws that will dictate what the punishment may be. Now, with that said, with a false equivalence, something that you guys have to understand with this Conor McGregor situation, right? Over the years, I've noticed that Conor McGregor, well, let's just say he was a little bit left leaning. And this is my own observation. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, if you've noticed things different about Conor McGregor in, let's say, the earlier times, let's say around 2014 or so, right? What was Conor McGregor known for in Ireland? I'll tell you. He was a big proponent in legalizing gay marriages in Ireland, which is important to understand to sort of grasp where his mental mindset was at politically during that time when he was just coming up. Okay. Also, you got to take into consideration he's gotten a few, let's say, back and forth with Donald Trump. If you guys don't remember, back in 2015, before Donald Trump became the U.S. president, Donald Trump made fun of Ronda Rousey for getting knocked out. And Conor McGregor, of course, came to his defense saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a fighter or this and that. You're just a big mouth. Basically slagging off Trump in defense of Ronda Rousey because Donald Trump said that he was glad she lost because she wasn't a very nice person. And I think a lot of that had to deal with the fact that Ronda Rousey at the time was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And Bernie Sanders was, well, a pretty big opponent for Trump, if not the entire Democratic establishment that wanted to, let's say, get a Democrat president in office at the time, which obviously backfired because Trump ended up winning. And yeah, that's neither here or there. But the point of the matter is, this is where Conor McGregor was in his political ethos at the time. So, what is significant about this? I got to tell you, I've always mentioned and claimed that Conor McGregor was a big proponent and a big contributor in bringing the hip hop culture to mixed martial arts. I've said this over and over and over again, probably more so than, let's say, any African American fighters or any British African fighters or any fighter that comes from any, let's say, urban community of some sort. That and Nate Diaz, which obviously is sort of the reason why the fight between him and Nate Diaz was as big as it was, because it attracted a multitude of different audiences, and some of those were crossovers or somehow lapovers with Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor fans that come from the hip hop community. So, in other words, let's just try to understand this in perspective. Would you say that the hip hop community sort of leans a little bit left, right? At least for the vast majority of them. If you remember Nipsey Hussle, one of the biggest artists to come out of California, by the way, from Slauson down in LA, he had a song in 2016 before he died called F Donald Trump, right? And guess what? A lot of people were down with this song. A lot of people in the hood were bumping this song. And from the time that I remember, even this song was played in Conor McGregor's after party in New York after he had beaten Eddie Alvarez. So you see the picture that I'm kind of painting here, right? Well, let's go even further with that. The other picture that I'm trying to paint, and something that I need you guys to understand, is that there are people in the hip-hop community like, well, he's not necessarily in a hip-hop community. He sort of played a character, but I'm talking about John Cena. Let's talk about him, right? If you notice, earlier in his career, okay, the guy was sort of a hip-hop aficionado, a freestyler. At the time when John Cena came out, the movie 8 Mile was hot. And he was a battle rapper, and so he ran with the whole entire gimmick. And guess what? It made the John Cena that we see today. But over the years, as you notice, John Cena sort of started developing a little bit more of a conservative, pro-military, pro-America type of persona to him, but still kept a little bit of that essence of his hip-hop mojo that he developed in his early career. Well, guess what? I think that's really interesting to point out, because a lot of guys that I know that come from the hood sort of
Well, they're not rappers, they're not famous fighters, they're not famous entertainers, but guess what? They all deal with the same transition within their lives. I've known plenty of guys that have spent time in prison that have lived that life of crime, and then when they came out, they were staunch conservatives, Trump supporters, or just maybe overall conservative, not necessarily Trump or Republican centric to any degree, but within that same way of thinking. Another guy that I knew that was like that, a guy who, by the way, I've been a feature of in his show. His name is Matt Spear, right? He was a former Navy intelligence guy, right? Very fascinating character. And I was very privileged enough to be part of his show one time, to call in, to be part of a guest, to talk several times, maybe about twice or maybe three times I have. One of them was a phone call. But one of the things that I find fascinating about Matt is that he has a show called Don't Unfriend Me, right? And it's a great concept because, again, it really deals a lot with, let's say, people having differing opinions and differing worldviews, but with the theme of saying, hey, you know what? Don't unfriend me. We may think differently. Maybe there's some things that we can come down the line and say, you know what? We have something more in common than we do the opposite. Okay, that's literally the theme of the show. But what's interesting about him, aside from the fact that he's a former Navy guy, aside from the fact that he's a former Californian who now lives in Colorado and has had these corporate jobs with Comcast and Apple and things of that nature, was that he also grew up in the Ventura area. And even in one of his shows, I remember he said that he's been around gangs before. He is no stranger to the culture of the North Daniels, to the culture of the Bloods and Crips. And yet, you look at this guy, he is a staunch conservative, he is pro-America, he cares about the borders of America, which, by the way, is very important to understand this particular content. Because guess what? What was Conor McGregor fighting for in terms of what he was tweeting about, or what the Irish government was trying to hone down on him as some sort of incitement, which is what? Telling the Irish people, you know what, you guys need to go out there and protect yourselves, maintain safety, maintain vigilance, but also, he also sort of condemned the violence, which you sort of have to, right? Now that they're trying to crack down on him. Well, now, the other unfortunate thing about this is there are no arrests being made with Conor McGregor yet, right? However, what they are trying to do, as they are currently investigating him, Ireland, what they're trying to do is create laws that sort of prohibit certain speeches on the internet. Now, why is this significant to try to understand? Because right now there's no crime. But later down the road, as they're investigating and as they're trying to put these bills through and these laws passed, guess what? It may change somewhere down the road. And then here's the other insane kicker of it all. Conor McGregor has mentioned he wanted to run for Prime Minister or President of Ireland. Now, why is that significant? Because guess what? What's going on with Donald Trump right now? Well, I can tell you that he wants to run for president again. He wants to become the biggest son of a gun of them all. Why do I say he wants to be the biggest son of a gun of them all? Because he's already number 45, and he wants to become number 47 after he beats the number 46 Joe Biden, if and when he does, which, by the way, is highly debatable at this point based on the criminal charges they bring against him. Which brings me to my point. This is the reason why Conor McGregor has an issue in his hands with the Irish government. Because the Irish government knows that he wants to run things, wants to change whatever it is that he wants to change in terms of policies, domestic and foreign, when it comes to Irish politics. And guess what? The establishment is going to have a serious problem with that. And I'm going to tell you why. Conor McGregor comes from a working class background. And for those of you that don't understand about Irish society, they look down on the working class. And I'm talking about the middle class to higher elites of that society. Why? Because, let's face it, the working class have a very hard life in that particular part of the world. Not just Ireland, but also the UK and the entire British Isles period, right? They just have a completely different society than we do here in America. So as a result of that, guess what? A lot of these young men who come from these working class backgrounds, guys that are plumbers, guys that are construction workers, guys that, let's say, do, I don't know, labor jobs of some sort, right? Many of these guys turn to a life of crime in order to sustain a certain type of living or to maybe move themselves up to another class of, let's say, tax bracket of some sort or lack of tax bracket, but that's neither here or there. But either way, they are demonized because of that. And this is also the reason why, believe it or not, mixed martial arts, for as popular as Conor made it, is not as followed by, let's say, their mainstream media. And why is that? Well, for one reason or another, perhaps maybe you could say that the Irish have a lot of different sports. Nah, not really, not as much as we Americans have. Or do we have, let's say, more? Do we have more? Yeah, we definitely have more sports here, right? For you to not cover MMA, but then yeah, you look at MMA here in America. Yeah, it's nowhere near what you have with, let's say, hockey, baseball, or the other sports, right? If in fact MMA is a baby when it comes to that. But you would think in Ireland, what do they have? They have Gaelic football, which is a form of rugby, and then they have rugby, and then they have soccer, which is English football. And then that's basically it. And then maybe a few Irish people follow the NFL here and there with whatever TV deals that the NFL has going on in that side of the world. That's about it. That's all that you have. Either way, they should be covering mixed martial arts more often based on the fact that, well, Conor McGregor really made the sport a whole lot bigger than what people would have ever imagined it to be. Now, why is it not? Well, it's the simple fact that Conor McGregor just does not fit the image of what the Irish want to be portrayed. They don't want to be portrayed as thugs. They don't want to be portrayed as maybe even right-wing people to a certain degree, right? Well, here's the thing with Conor McGregor. He causes a lot of controversy, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that he's always wrong about certain subjects. Is it wrong for a person to be very wary of the fact that you have somebody living in Ireland for 10 years and out of nowhere he ends up stabbing somebody well after this country, this kind country of Ireland, looks after them? Now, here's a question that I want to leave off with this. Does it matter that this man was an immigrant for 10 years and never contributed to Ireland? If so, what does that have to do with him randomly killing this woman? And number two, what is the ideological drive behind this killing? Because this woman doesn't seem to have any issues with anybody, doesn't seem to be a gangster, doesn't seem to be a political figure or a military personnel of any kind. This is an innocent civilian, so what is going on? But more importantly, what is the motivation behind all this? But more importantly, what is the motivation of the Irish people for them to cause this type of riot and this type of chaos? Was it a long time coming, or was it just this one particular incident that made them think, you know what, we're not going to stand for this? One is too many, and we're just not going to allow it again? Or was it something that has always been happening and has always been a serious problem to where it's just became a boiled over problem now? But either way, like and subscribe. I hope you guys love the content. This is the most that I could really bring out as far as information and as far as comparisons of what this particular incident can bring in terms of news and the coverage and everything around it. But either way, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for all those that have been watching the lives, been watching the videos. Don't forget to tell a friend, and hope you guys enjoy. Hopefully I can come back with some more updates on this particular matter at hand. But for now, this is what we have in terms of the coverage that is going on with Conor McGregor and his issues with the Irish government. What does all this mean leading up to his potential fight in UFC 300? Also, what do any of these mean for Ian Garry going into UFC 296? Why is this important? By the way, this is the second part that I want to mention in terms of Ian Garry and why it's important to bring up Ian Garry in this particular matter. Ian Garry, as you know right now, the little scandal that he has going on with people calling his wife a gold digger and this and that, and then the fact that he took the last name
of his wife's ex-husband, who, by the way, is their live-in roommate and is also his nutritionist, which to a lot of people really seems strange, but to the mind of Ian Gary seems normal because only he's the one that's in that relationship to really understand what is going on. But in the eyes and how it looks to other people, obviously it's just not going to look good. And you add to the fact that the mixed martial arts community is, for better or worse, toxic, right? Toxic for better, because sometimes you do need a bit of a gut reality check when it comes to certain subjects when certain things are going on unchecked, right? Like, for example, certain scandals that fans are going to be outraged by and then are going to protest and make a big fuss about it to create some change, whether it will be matchup or cultural practices within the community. Okay, that's the better part of that toxicity. The worst part of that toxicity is people jumping into conclusions. They may not know what's going on. Now, for me, I can really honestly tell you, as a Muslim man, it is quite strange for me to see a man like Ian Gary change his last name, okay, based on the fact that, well, he is the man. And even in the Islamic context of Orthodox practices, the woman isn't even allowed to change her last name because guess what? According to Islamic theology, the woman is not part of the lineage of the man that she's marrying. So it makes no sense for her to change her last name. But either way, men are never going to change their last name in the Muslim community, which makes the Ian Gary situation a lot worse. So why is it important to bring up Ian Gary in this particular question with Conor McGregor and this quote unquote right wing uprising? Well, because Ian Gary, if you notice, seems to have grown up in a very upper middle class liberal Irish family, unlike Conor McGregor, who grew up a little bit hard in the rough parts of Dublin, whereas Ian Gary grew up in the richer parts of Dublin, for make of that as you will. But it affects a person's personality, it affects their worldview and how they see things. But also, with Conor McGregor, another thing to really understand in the light of that concept is as you get older, your views start to change. When you get a little bit of money, your choices become different. Your outlook of the world, especially when you have children and the overprotective nature that you have as a father, you're going to lean a certain direction, whether that would be politically, religiously, or a certain creed or ethos that you want to live by. And this is just what we're seeing right now. So the fact that Conor McGregor wants to run for president, wants to run for prime minister, well, I got to tell you, that does affect the entire reasoning behind the Irish government and how they're going to charge him, on top of the fact of how they're going to rearrange laws around this particular incident and how they're going to deal and punish people that they need to punish based on, let's say, chaos control. Now, let's move on to another particular person that sort of fills into this whole gap of this story with quote unquote right wing rising in Europe. How about Tommy Robinson? Recently, he was arrested during a protest in London because obviously this man has always been part of protests with nationalists versus the Islamists. Now it's Palestinian supporters versus nationalists. But obviously, as you guys know, Tommy Robinson was kicked out of the EDL by neo-Nazis that infiltrated the group. A group, by the way, that he created himself only for him to get kicked out of his own party. But that's neither here nor there. So he gets arrested in recent times, and I got to tell you, it's quite strange considering that, well, Tommy Robinson was going to do a podcast with none other than his old-time friend, Andrew Tate, who, by the way, till this day, from the years that I've known Tommy Robinson, it's really strange to see that this guy grew up with Andrew Tate and they actually know each other. They've actually trained in the same gym that Andrew Tate has trained out of for him to win his championships in the kickboxing world. But either way, what's interesting too about this, right, is the fact that What's interesting about this also is the fact that Tommy Robinson was arrested just before he was going to do a podcast with Andrew Tate. Now, why is that significant? I'm going to tell you why. Because the UK and Ireland, just like what I had mentioned earlier, does not want to deal with a riot, with chaos. And can you imagine if Andrew Tate either converts Tommy Robinson or he somehow gets him on his side without really converting to Islam, but yet gets him on his side on the political side of things, which, by the way, is already happening because you see Tommy Robinson work with other Muslims when it comes to tackling, let's say, child grooming situations, or let's say child molestations, or unlawful raping of some sort, right? So this is something we have to try to understand right now. If he was to meet with him and influence him in any kind of way, whether it would be to the point where he converts him to Islam or whether it would be to the point where, let's say, he just brings him onto his side, it's a big problem for the UK government, and they can't allow it because guess what? They have a lot of economic problems going on. The budget that they would have to deal with in terms of having to pay cops and riot gears and things of that nature is just going to be very exponentially dangerous for their economy and their response to, let's say, the chaos that can possibly ensue as a result. So this is what is going on. This is literally what is going on. And again, I could be wrong. This is my own subjective opinion. Of course, these are subjective opinions with basis of understanding certain baselines of how these governments operate, as opposed to, let's say, the United States. So this is all that I really have for this particular subject. I can't really think of anything else that I could add to this particular matter at hand. But so far, this is what we got as a recap from the 25 minutes that I've been talking. So Conor McGregor, possibly being investigated for incitement, okay? Plans on running for office in Ireland. Big problem, because now Ireland wants to create new laws to, let's say, hamper down on whatever momentum he has going on inciting, let's say, whether it's the right wing or just normal Irish citizens that have concerns for these unlawful killings. But either way, they want to do something in terms of damage control, in terms of, let's say, chaos control, and they also want to put out the fire before it can inflame into a bigger mess that they can't put out. So that's one. And then also, too, how does this relate with Ian Gary? Obviously, Ian Gary is probably going to be seen as, let's say, a less of a man, somebody who's sort of a wimp, somebody who's not within the ethos of the red pill community in that kind of context. So relating all of that, how is this going to affect him and this particular distraction going into UFC 296, where he has taken on an extremely violent opponent such as Vicente Luque? So all of these things sort of correlate into that. And then I brought up Tommy Robinson based on the fact that he got arrested just before he was going to do a podcast with Andrew Tate. And what that's going to come out of that? Well, possible influence. So let's talk about the fact that, let's say, if Tommy Robinson was to even become a Muslim. By the way, that's not far-fetched. I know that a lot of people say Tommy Robinson is the number one enemy of Islam, the number one proponent against its ideology or its way of life in any kind of way. I understand that. However, you got to understand, in Islamic history, this would not be unusual or something out of the blue, because some of the greatest warriors in Islam, Khalid bin Walid, was one of the biggest opponents for Islam. Oh my God! Sound familiar? Went against all Muslim figures, fought against Islam. Sound familiar? Because this is Tommy Robinson in a nutshell. And then all of a sudden became one of the biggest leaders in the Muslim world after becoming one of the greatest conquerors who have ever lived in entire history. Sent me a super Islamic military. That is so awesome.
So that is something. See on Conor just sent me a minutes that I had offered to you guys. Chat, that is so. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to share, like, tell a friend to tell a friend, and also continue to watch all the way until the end. Thank you so much for giving this time and effort to listen to this particular content. And I hope in the future I can drop more hot content for you guys in order for you guys to get an objective point of view of understanding mixed martial arts news, of taking a look at different perspectives, not just my own. Well, if you guys want to check out the rest of that, obviously the video of that was from 1 year ago. It was called uh, Conor McGregor and Tommy Robinson. So, by the way, shout outs to Jesse on Fire for sending me a super chat. Let me tell you, man, this is exactly what I get into YouTube for. You know what I'm saying? Getting in there, being recognized by your peers, man. That is the ultimate awesomeness of it all is being recognized by your peers. So that right there just gave me a strong extra boost of feeling a lot of confidence, being tapped in by Jesse on Fire, bro. Can you imagine Jesse on Fire, a dude that I watches me, and you know what? This is the most beautiful thing about this whole entire YouTube experience, right? I mean, just nothing short of awesomeness. So shout outs to Jesse on Fire for the $20 super chat right there. So brother, thank you so much, man. So that's what I'm talking about, man. Jesse on Fire, bro. Jesse on Fire. Tapping in with the homies. So shout outs to him for that one. All right, so onto this subject, right? Obviously, there is a red pill component to this entire matter at hand, right? And that red pill component is there were 8 women in that jury and 4 men. Obviously, that's significant. Now, why is that? Obviously, there is a growing feminism wave that's going on in Ireland. Okay, there was this WWE superstar by the name of Becky Lynch, right? But shout out to my WWE belt back there. But this is something that I think is really interesting about this whole entire matter, right? Uh, her nickname was the Man. Now, does anybody find that kind of strange? You are a female wrestler, by the way, a very good one, right? She could be considered like maybe the Ronda Rousey or maybe the Amanda Nunes of the WWE. But you call yourself the Man. I don't understand that. Like, what are you trying to prove by calling yourself the Man? Does anybody understand that concept with Becky Lynch? But I'm tying this into the fact that obviously she's Irish. Common ideology that is setting in Ireland right now. But you also got to remember back in 2014, man, Conor McGregor was very much liberal. Now, I don't know if he was an Obama supporter, but one thing remains about Conor McGregor is that his political mindset has changed over the years, and I think money will do that. Now, obviously, money created a certain haven of ill behavior on the part of Conor McGregor, but at the same time, what Conor McGregor has going on is a change in his political shift in being a father, being a multi-millionaire, maybe even going into a billionaire. But man, how about that, right? The fact that he got dropped by Proper 12, that should not be a surprise to a lot of people. But here's the thing about it, right? If you drop Conor McGregor from Proper 12, what are you going to sell that product With? And with who? Ian Gary? Are you going to use Ian Gary as the face of Irish whiskey now? I don't know, man. So my man here says, why is it so absurd and crazy to believe that he actually did it? He has a documented, clear history of being a psycho and doing bad-ish, insane stuff. So, Buzz, I'm glad that you mentioned this. There's a video that I'm going to react to that sort of delves into this particular matter, right? We're going to delve into what made Conor McGregor the psychopath that he is today. But, Buzz, here's something that I want to really address with your question, right? I truly believe that Conor McGregor has done certain mishaps in the past. I'm not doubting that at all. What I'm skeptical about is this particular case. I truly believe that this woman, Nikita Hand, is a complicit woman in terms of, how do I say this, her own free will. This was her own free will. So that's why, on the one hand, it is absurd that she's saying all these things, and yet the videos are saying something completely different. Okay, because the videos are showing that she's the aggressor in this particular matter. But yet, she also doesn't want to face the video. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are hyper skeptical of this particular matter. Okay, there's just a lot of things that I'm going to be very hyper skeptical about. But it does not dismiss what Conor has done in the past, which means there are nuances and gray lines to this case that we really have to take into consideration. So I'm not doubting that Conor is a psychopath one bit. Not one bit. I don't doubt that he's a psychopath at all, right? I'm not doubting you on that. But for this case, I think that Nikita was a fangirl. I think that her and she experienced what it was like being with a superstar. And other than that, it doesn't exonerate Conor from his other mishaps. Okay, that's what's really important to understand here. Because if you do not take those things into consideration, then I think you're not looking at this from a highly intelligent point of view. So again, that's what it is. You have to look at these from an intelligent point of view, and if you don't, then you know what? Unfortunately, okay, that's just really what it comes down to. So yeah, let's delve into this video that I wanted to show you. Right, every time Conor got hated on, right here. Let's
After winning the double championship in Cage Warriors and becoming the biggest MMA superstar in just a few years, he became the creator of his own destruction.
Partying is weakness for the soul, my friend, so I try and avoid it.
A series of McGregor's life drastically reduced the number of his
All right, so what we're going to delve into this particular video is how Conor was focused in the very beginning of his career, okay? Heavily focused. And what changed after that focus? It was the Floyd Mayweather fight. That was the biggest turning point of his career, and we're going to delve into that. Buzz Rizier says they offered a settlement as well as which was rejected. So if it was about the money, then the narrative doesn't make sense. Not saying he's guilty because I don't know along with everyone else. Yeah, Buzz, again, we're both answering this in a very humble manner, right? Because we want to give the benefit of the doubt and we don't want to follow the trend. You see, one of the biggest problems I think that many people have in the world of mixed martial arts and in the world of politics in any type of echo chamber, there is this idea that you have to keep up with in order to keep up that identity. For example, I'll give you an example, okay, from the Islamic side and the Islamic community POV perspective, okay? I grew up very distrustful of the Shias, okay, because obviously you could tell by my beard I'm a Sunni and this and that, and there's a conflict between that or whatever, right? So I just felt like over the years I was put in this echo chamber of being told what the Shias are, and then even though we still have a world of difference in our beliefs, I started to really learn more about the Shias and how they really look at the world. But yet I also looked at there's other subsets of Shias, and to sort of put them into one category or one box, I don't think really helps tell the entire story to its full capacity of explaining it in its full details. So this is what we have in this particular case right here, right? We have a lot of people that have an echo chamber in how they look at the world and how they view other people. But we also have a very complicated case that has different nuances that we can't ignore. And here's the thing about this, right? This particular case was not really big in America, right? Because we just have so many sports programs, so many news cycles to go through. There's Trump, there's him going into office in a couple of months. There's Kamala Harris, there's all of these things going on. There's natural disasters. We just got a lot of things going on in America. So the idea of Conor McGregor and his mishaps, which, by the way, has become a norm now in the news cycles, just like John Jones. Oh, John Jones ran somebody over again. It's just business as usual, isn't it? That's just what it really comes down to. And now with Conor McGregor, it's the same thing. It's just business as usual. So it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. While it's not getting attention, at the same time, it is also being misunderstood to the highest order and highest degree. So as a result, many people come up with their own conclusions. Many people run with their own narratives while missing different points and different matters dealing with this particular subject. So let's move on to this video right here.
His fans who became his haters. And this is the story of the chronological events that led to...
By the way, shout out to Jab. Okay, subscribe to his. He made 6 days ago. This was a very well made video. Shout out to Jab's. Right now he has only 432 subscribers. That's going to go up right after this. Look at the views on this one. Within 6 days. This is a very good video.
To all that.
Sorry I'm late, I just don't give a fuck!
Everything was going well until 2016, when Conor won the UFC lightweight belt.
Now right here, this is the ultimate goal of Conor McGregor right here, was when he came out on top with the double championship. Now, why is this important? He said that he was going to come into the game, get in, get the checks, get the belt, and get out. He, at that point in 2016, he was checked out. He was checked out. The Floyd Mayweather fight was just the icing on the cake. If he was to win that, he would just ride off into the sunset and never bother with it ever again. But here he is, just like everybody else, stuck in the game, because he just can't find a way out.
He first drew the ire of fans when he refused to defend his featherweight title, but they quickly got over it when they heard about his mission to become a double champion.
And you know what? This is the biggest criticism that Conor McGregor has had in his whole entire career. You never defended a belt, man. You never defended a 145. You never defended a 155. But his excuse was that he was out searching for greatness. But searching for those greatness, such as the Floyd Mayweather fight, I think affected his career in the long run. Floyd Mayweather damaged him in that fight, and nobody wants to take that into consideration. You see, prior to that, Conor McGregor never got knocked down, but after the Floyd fight, he got into the Khabib fight straight away and got knocked down for the first time. I'm going to argue and say that there was an effect to Conor McGregor and his chin somewhere down the road where it literally led into the Dustin Poirier knockout. So here we go.
When Notorious succeeded, no one thought things would go downhill in his MMA career and life. He refused to defend his belts, which many thought was obligatory if you wanted to be remembered as a true champion.
If you don't hold that belt for a certain amount of time, you gotta let it go, son.
Instead of being more active as a champion and continuing to impress us, McGregor decided to be inactive for the whole of 2017 and do a crossover boxing match with Floyd Mayweather to...
Now, how can you say no to an offer like this, right? Was it difficult to say no to an offer like this? Yeah, I'm going to say that it is. Look, there's this argument about fighter pay in the UFC, right? Well, he did what he needed to do in the UFC after the double championship. He took that double championship, fought Floyd Mayweather, literally 3 years off of his career, yet left as a world champion himself, right? So it was a world champion in boxing and a world champion in mixed martial arts that ultimately made this fight a whole lot special. Just like the Tyson Fury and the Francis Ngannou fight.
prove himself as the best boxer in the world. But the boxing world differs from MMA, so Conor was denied his moment of glory and triumph.
I just want to make something perfectly clear that not all boxing versus MMA fights are the same, okay? Like, take Clay Collard, for example, UFC vet. He came into top rank of promotions, started beating up a lot of their prospects, something to really take into consideration. But that's neither here or there. Well, sort of important to understand that Floyd Mayweather, it was in a completely different league. I mean, we're talking about Floyd just 3 years off of his retirement, right? He was still just a little bit in his prime, but like he said, enough to be able to beat up Conor.
Was stopped by one of the best boxers in history, and it later turned out that winning this match was his second priority, and that paycheck was the main motivation for this endeavor. After a fat payday of $130 million, the feeling of power and a full wallet went over the Irishman's head.
So you see, that loss was not really a loss, but a win to a certain degree.
And opened the way for mischiefs that would put him on the front pages of newspapers.
I mean, mischiefs, that is an understatement. And yeah, papers for years, that's an understatement as well.
His first misstep was on March 31st, 2017, when he was going over the speed limit in Dublin. When he finally appeared on November 18th, he apologized and pleaded guilty and was fined €400. If you thought he was reflecting on his actions, think again. He wasn't. He arrogantly left the court, got into his car without wearing a seatbelt, and left at the speed of light. He threw out a phrase that was a slap to the face of the justice system.
Come and get me! Come and get me!
He said, come and get me. Come and get me, while he's speeding off.
11th October 2017. Conor was again caught red-handed and behind the wheel, rolling his Range Rover well over the speed limit in Ireland. He appeared before the court with another apology and received a fine of €1,000, and his driver's license was revoked for 6 months. However, This was not Conor's last driving offense, nor was it the last incident in 2017. But fortunately, this time, he did not endanger the lives of others. On 10th November, his SBG colleague Charlie Ward debuted at Bellator.
Now this was a very with Mark Goddard. This is when people really started to see Conor McGregor unfold into what we have been seeing him as of late.
Or 187. Although he was coming off 2 losses, the Irish fighter knocked out John Redmond in the first round and did not hide his happiness. But judging by the situation in the cage, Conor was much happier than his friend. McGregor didn't even bother to hide his excitement. He stormed the cage and jumped on Ward, making referee Mark Goddard's job difficult and selfishly taking the attention away from the winner. Goddard warned him, but Notorious went straight after him. Security intervened, and instead of...
And this was where a lot of people started to really look at Conor sideways. Was at this
Charlie walking proudly in front of the cameras, McGregor was in the main frame. His desire to be the main character wherever he goes did him no good, as the...
You know what? That is a good point with what Jab is saying, right? A main character syndrome, trying to be the main character everywhere he goes. I don't know if that is the case for this one. You could say that about his life overall, but different people have a different way of expressing how they're happy for their homies. I mean, this guy was, I think, just really happy, but he couldn't contain himself because he is that type of personality, so...
Future will show. After 2017, we get to April 2018, the moment when Conor attacked the bus with a steel dolly. We won't dwell on the detailed events, as they are well known to everyone. We'll summarize them only with Dana's words.
There's a guy named Artem who is Conor's best friend. He's from Russia. Habib is from Russia, too. There was some kind...
And by the way, speaking of which, this guy right here, Artem Lobov, he's got a lawsuit coming up with Conor McGregor. Okay, he's got a lawsuit coming up, and we're talking about January. So after Conor, more than likely, is going to spend Christmas with his family straight away. After the Christmas season, right into the New Year's, he's jumping into the courtroom with Artem Lobov in January. There's a lot going on with that case right there. We're going to talk more about that, but back to the video with Conor McGregor and the channel Jab. Every time Conor turned fans into haters, this was a great into it, and I urge you guys to give this one a follow.
Kind of Russian stuff going on between those two, and Habib slapped him. Surrounded him with his...
He said Russian stuff. Let me give you guys some context of what exactly that Russian stuff is that Dana White is talking about. So what happened was Conor McGregor was called a chicken by the Dagestanis, and so he obviously took that into a serious offense. And that's literally what the Russian stuff is that Dana White is talking about on this one.
His friends and slapped him. He picked up the phone and called Conor.
That's embarrassing.
Habib slapped him. Conor fueled up the G650 and loaded.
Look how happy Dana White looks as he is expressing his glee of this whole entire story. Now, look, as a commissioner and as a president and a CEO of a company, you really have to condemn these certain actions. He's like saying, oh, look at this. They loaded up all these Irish guys. Yeah. Dana White looks like a young boy in a comic book store right now watching an action movie. Oh, they're going to load up the plane with Irish guys. Oh, my goodness. And they're going to go to Brooklyn. Oh, my goodness. He's like all happy about it. Look at Dana White's face. He's like a fanboy. He can't help himself. But hey, listen. The only time Dana White was ever allowed to show his favoritism towards Conor McGregor was during Floyd Mayweather fight, because obviously he doesn't promote Floyd.
Ended up with Irish guys that flew to New York and attacked the bus that he was on.
Conor.
But I think out of all the UFC fighters, it's safe to say that Conor McGregor is probably his favorite guy. I mean, look at Paul Daly, right? He punches Josh Koscheck, and then all of a sudden, he gets kicked out of the UFC, but Conor throws a dolly at a bus full of fighters that are cutting weight fight week. But at least you could say Paul Daly attacked his opponent, right? At an untimely manner because he punched him after the bell, but he punched an opponent. Conor threw a dolly full of fighters that had nothing to do with him, had nothing to do with his beef, and were just trying to make weight and fight for the weekend. But hey.
He was arrested a few days later, charged with assault and criminal.
There's Kian Cowley right there. He the guys that was obviously caught on tape. I don't know if anybody else was, or maybe they had a separate two guys that were part of that whole dolly gate in Brooklyn. And by the way, what's funny about that is when they were throwing the dolly, there was a sign right there from Biggie's quote that says, "Spread love, it's the Brooklyn way." And Conor wasn't there. Or,
mischief and pleaded guilty. He was released on $50,000 bail and avoided jail time and possible deportation from the U.S., but he was forced to complete.
Now, can you imagine a deportation would have really heavily affected his status? Sort of has that issue going on right now, but yeah.
5 days of community service and an anger management course, which is realistically a small penalty for the damage he did, and a small penalty for a rich man like himself.
Conor's got a lot of things he's got to get through over the next year.
On September 20, at the UFC 229 press conference, the issue between Khabib and Conor continued, but still didn't reach its peak. McGregor arrived drunk.
Now this right here, this right here, hands down. And the fight delivered everything. It delivered the rest
to
is
do
history.
media duties, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Notorious had two tasks, promoting Proper 12 whiskey and crossing the line in trash talk against Khabib Nurmagomedov. But unlike all previous trash talk skirmishes fans have enjoyed, this one was not like that. This time, he really overdid it, making the...
Yeah. It did the job of being the biggest pay-per-view
press
of all
conferences
time.
with all previous opponents look like a joke.
You're a phony, a fake, a little rat, a little weasel. Shut your mouth, mate. You'll be dead, not in a cell. Fuck you.
Yes,
Oh, Lord, shame me that.
You know this. He said, I'm gonna explain.
Fake rat.
The more he spoke, the more people switched to the side of Nurmagomedov.
From what I heard also, this really turned off a lot of people in Ireland, right? Based on the fact that they really were not fond of making fun of other people's religion. I mean, the Irish, they sort of have a reputation in being religious Catholics, so they sympathize with people that have a religion or follow it, and this was not a good look for Conor during his time, so.
Who decided to leave his talk for the cage. Even the fight night did not pass normally. Both fighters were fined for the post-fight brawl, and Conor was suspended by the NSAC for 6 months and fined $50,000.
So here's something I really got to say about the suspension thing, right? It's not really the biggest deal in the world. Let me explain why, right? The suspension, 6 months, that's standard for somebody that fights at the level that Conor McGregor and Khabib fight at.
Before the year ended, Conor managed to get involved in another police investigation in December, this time for a sexual assault accusation in Ireland that allegedly happened in a hotel. These were no small accusation.
And by the way, this right here The 2018 incident is what led to the situation that we have right now with Conor McGregor.
And therefore,
Nikita
a severe blow to his high profile. Unfortunately, this was not the only indictment of this nature, but this process dragged on until 2024.
Exactly. As what we are seeing today. 2024, here it is.
Conor did not calm down even after this, so he participated in another incident in March 2019, which resulted in another arrest. The report says McGregor was leaving the Fontainebleau, Miami Beach shortly after 5 a.m. Monday when a 22-year-old man attempted to take a picture of McGregor. Police say McGregor slapped the phone out of the man's hand.
Yeah, so this right here, a lot of people are sort of hinting at CTE as a possibility of why this had gone down with Conor McGregor, right? I think that the fan may have agitated him to a certain extent, but I don't know, man. I don't know. These right here, it's hard to tell. Look, you're never going to know unless you were there. So that's really the best way to put it. All right. Well, speaking of you never know until you're actually there, here I am back live at it again right now. Just wanted to show you guys some of my past videos and things of that nature, just to sort of give you guys reacquainted with the just to kind of get you guys reacquainted with my come up, how I came along since then, and my progress, and also just the past work that I have done. So with that in mind, I think that is all that we have for this one right now. I want to give you guys a little bit of some housekeeping notes just right before I leave. So I want to defer you guys to some videos that I have here. So obviously I have the UFC 1776 at the White House, Jones versus Aspinall, right? And I talk about why American fighters don't get any love, right? I give examples of Bilal Muhammad. I give examples of John Jones even. Things of that nature. Why American champions would not be popular and why we just don't support American fighters the way that we should, right? The next video I got, what did you do during your 4th of July? Well, an LA Crip got his hands blown off with fireworks. Lo and behold, a social media influencer also comes out and makes fun of him for it, only to have a bunch of Crips press on him and, well, find out the rest of this story right here, right? Definitely need some help on some views on this one. And this is the latest video that I have right now. And this is the live stream that you're watching right now. So if you want to defer to this in the future and rewatch the stream, it is right here. But for now, all I got to say is thank you so much for all those that have tapped in. Let me give a shout outs to NJ003, Marty Miller, as always, very helpful to the show. Also, Watch the Clown, Only Chubbs Prods, how are you? Noah Gonzalez, and everyone around the world that has tapped in. Thank you for tapping into this live stream. It's been real. Have a great afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless, and I'll see you in the next content, next live stream, next video, inshallah.